Good afternoon, folks. How is everybody doing today? Yeah, nods. People online, you can't see it, but there are nods in the room. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio lunchtime talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and online. Hello, online people. So whether you're in Bristol or far away, you are very, very welcome to join us. I am Asian man in my mid-30s with short black hair, some of it, and wearing all black and a particularly hilarious t-shirt today. I'm going to say a little bit more about the PM Studio and who we are and what we do, and then I will introduce today's wonderful speakers. Very warm welcome to anyone here online or in the studio who's new to the studio. Have we got any new faces in the studio today? Little show of hands, anybody? Oh, it's all a home crowd, how lovely. Right, for the purposes of anybody listening online who might not have heard about the space, I will talk a little bit about this. If you do not know much about the Pervasive Media Studio, the PM Studio Lunchtime Talks are part of Open Studio Friday. Every Friday, the Pervasive Media Studio opens up its doors and offers you the chance to spend time in the space. You can hot desk here between 10 and 5 every day. A little bit of housekeeping. Feel free to move around, make a cup of tea, or grab a glass of water from the kitchen. We do ask that you don't use the microwave. Somebody's using the microwave. Get somebody to go and have a go at that on account of it messes with the audio induction loop on here. We have a quiet space just to the side of this door. Through there, if you want to go and decompress, or if you need a quiet moment, please do. There are fire exits the way that you came in, back through the bar. Or there's also one just here on the left, down the end, and then you take a left. We are not expecting any fire drills, so if you see any of the staff looking panicked, please do follow one of us. Staff team, put your hands up, please. It's only me and Emma. Danielle was sitting there. I think she's gone to do the microwave. Accessible toilets, baby change, and toilets can be found just there next to the kitchen in the corridor. There will be a captioned version of this talk available online on the same link after the talk is finished. Anyway, without further ado, this week's talk is by choreographer Rebecca Evans and computing curriculum specialist Sue Adams. Over the last 8 years, they've been developing Move and Code, a program that uses movement and physical computing to teach the fundamentals of programming and computational thinking. This is with an aim to inspire female and non-binary identifying students aged 11 to 14 into future digital careers. They'll be sharing methods and ideas that they've developed, discoveries they have made, and questions that they still have. I cannot wait. Over to you.
Thank you. So I'm Rebecca. I'm a white female in her early 40s with brown hair. I'm wearing all black with a white shirt with little black squares on it. And I am the Move part of Move and Code. And I come from a contemporary dance background, and I also make work with dance and digital.
And I'm Sue. I am a white female, a little bit further into my 40s. I have brown hair. I am wearing black trousers, orange t-shirt, and I am the code part of Move and Code.
Great, yeah, so together, yes, we are Move and Code, and we are working to inspire the creators of a diverse digital future. Before we kind of jump into talking a bit more about the program, we wanted to give you an idea of how these two things go together, because that's often the first question that people ask. So we're going to do a little bit of a warm-up if you're able to. You might need your hands for this. This warm-up is hopefully accessible, but if there's anything that you want to adopt or change for you, that's absolutely fine as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say a number, and you're going to do an action to that number. Okay, so I'm going to say the number 1, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to blink your eyes. Yes, so 1. Brilliant. Okay, we're going to say 2, and you're going to clap. Yeah, or do a version of a clap. 2. Great. Okay, I'm going to say 3, and you're going to do a wave, or a version of a wave for you. Yes, okay, so we're going to put that in a sequence in order. So 1, 2, 3. Let's do it again. 1, 2, 3. Brilliant. You have all been amazing dancers and performed a choreographic sequence.
And you've been amazing computers because you've run through a program based on an algorithm, which is a set of precise instructions, in this case, in a sequence.
Great. So we're going to make this a little bit more complex now. So I'm going to call out the numbers at random, and you're going to do those actions. Yes? Okay, so I'll start easy. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Brilliant. Brilliant. Now, you've been, again, amazing dancers, and you've performed a improvised choreographic score.
And you've been amazing computers because you have applied selection, which is also known as conditionals, and you have checked if something, you've continuously checked if a certain condition is true, the numbers said by Rebecca, 1, 2, or 3, you've done the assigned action in response to that, and that helps computers to make decisions, which they couldn't do without it.
Yeah. So that's kind of a way in which we kind of start our usual days and workshops. And you can see kind of how movement and specifically choreography and programming are linked. And we use this to help to kind of bring to life computing and also to make it more accessible and exciting. So, yes, great. So, what are aims in doing this? We're using the movement of physical computing to inspire young female and non-binary identifying people ages 11 to 14 to become the creators of a diverse digital future. So when we're doing movement, we're usually doing that. So I come from a contemporary dance background, but what I'm usually trying to do is set tasks so that students come up with their own movements. Yeah. So most of the movement language is generated by them, which a couple years ago was a lot of dabbing or whatever famous TikTok dance is happening at that moment. Usually arrives in the room, but it's really about them using their own movement language to generate the choreography and create.
Just to let you know, physical computing, if you don't already know, which I'm sure some of you do, it's the combination of coding with physical components, digital components, that when combined in the physical world make something happen that interacts with the environment around it. So it exists in the physical world and interacts with the physical world.
Yeah, and so Sue and I met about 8 years ago at a Women of the World event, which was inspiring female identifying students into a career in digital, and we were just in the rooms next to each other, and we got really curious, and we poked our nose in and started asking some questions and talking about physical computing and movement, and got really excited about some of the crossovers that we saw. So we started to explore this in a one-day workshop, which is our kind of our one-day move and code workshop. And after piloting it a few times, we were really excited by how female and non-binary students were getting excited about computing and really felt empowered to engage with it in a maybe a different way than it had been being taught in schools up to that point. And so with this, we've worked with over 1,200 young people. We do a lot of evaluation on either side of the workshops, and we found that 75% of students usually feel more confident using computer programming after the workshops. And then just behind there, there's 50% of the students also
GCSE computing.
Yes, are more interested in considering GCSEs after this workshop. That is just kind of immediately after. We would love to do a little bit more research on following that along the timeline, which we have not been able to do. So yeah, just to caveat that.
Yeah. And we've also found that it really broadens the program, the way that we run it really broadens the minds of the students of how differently computing can be used and how creative it can be, especially thinking of the applications beyond what they might normally expect, which might be that people who work in computing either fix computers, create games, or create apps. And they think that it can do all sorts of other crazy, amazing things.
Yeah, it was really interesting to kind of start asking students where they think computing goes, and it is quite a small repertoire of jobs that they consider for digital and computing, and so it's just kind of trying to open that up a little bit more. So I'm just going to show you a video just to give you an idea a little bit more about kind of what this looks like for us. Should I just press the space bar to play?
Yeah. No.
Not my computer. Move and Code is a program that's inspiring female and non-binary people into a career in digital, and we're looking at that at ages 12 to 14. So to really shift their mindset into thinking about taking computing as a GCSE, to show that it's also a creative occupation and that computing can be creative, it can be fun, and it can also exist off a screen and really come alive in different ways.
There are several different kind of core programs that we offer. So we have the day-long Move and Code workshop. The week-long can be delivered in school or during the summer holidays. Then the month-long program is more bespoke. Things that we've done for term-long programs have been things like the Leytonstone Trailblazers, where we worked with a collection of students across multiple weeks and supported them through coming up with their own walking AR app tour.
So this program is important because there is a low percentage of female non-binary people taking up computing at GCSEs, which carries on through to A-levels and computing. And then that also is often reflected in the digital workforce as well. And if we're thinking about our future being very digital, we want to make sure that that future is built and represented by everyone rather than one demographic.
The beauty of the Move and Code programme is that anyone who feels that they're more creative or more physical than academic, and anyone who links computing to just maths or just technology or just typing at a computer might think, oh, actually, this is really exciting. I can do something really cool and make my own unique thing, whatever that might be.
So one thing that we do know is that the reason that GCSE computing is not being taken by female non-binary students is that there's, one, a lack of role models. There's also not an idea of what a career in digital can look like, and also how creative it can be. There's also not an idea of how maybe it applies to them or how it's interesting to them. And so we're trying to bring all of that forwards in this project by both me and Sue being female identifying, and also allowing them to lead their own outputs in it rather than us dictating a right or a wrong answer. So it gives you a little idea. We'll break it down a little bit more.
So whilst we do have lots of set programmes, one day to one term that I went through in that video, we also do deliver bespoke projects. So this week we've been working across the past 4 days on a bespoke programme with Knoll West Media Centre, apologies. And the students that we've been working with, or the young people that we've been working with, have been developing a future worlds-based crazy golf course that has tons of physical interactions that are all connected through storytelling, a connected theme, using physical computing and digital fabrications and that important connected storyline. And we're always aware throughout whatever we do that there's opportunities for us to learn from whatever we do, so we can learn from everything, evaluate regularly, and always use iteration within whatever we do because it's so important to us.
And so we really feel this value of the movement and choreography and the code to be valued in the room at the same time. So we really break that down in terms of time as well. So they do spend 40% of their time moving, 40% of their time coding, and then we have about 20% of the time doing testing and sharing. And part of that testing and sharing is really setting up kind of like a prototyping space. So they're really kind of going, okay, it's rough and ready, let's get it going, and then let's test it, and let's listen to our audiences or users. How can we make this better? Then going back. And so it's a real kind of, kind of really nice open process for them to get used to. And also kind of thinking that like the first time you make it, it's not going to be perfect, and that it just takes a lot of times to go at it to kind of develop it. Yeah.
And it's really important to us that our programme is not just for dancers and not just for coders. It's accessible to all, but at the same time we make it challenging for everyone too. So there's literally something for all levels. And we feel it's important to ask at the beginning of the day where people's skill sets lie, what they're actually interested in or really capable at, and recognising that not everyone has those same skill sets between themselves, so they can share knowledge, grow from other people's knowledge, and grow from that collaboration and that generosity that they might share between each other too.
Yeah, so kind of getting that idea of like who feels like there are more coders in the room or who feels like they have got more dance experience, and then really getting them to kind of be aware of sharing that and helping each other throughout the day. And I think like what happens is that we see people getting to take leads at different times of the day. So somebody who might not initially feel that they're very strong at the computing, they might be taking the lead in the choreography, but then that also has to feed into how the coding works with the choreography. So it starts to really kind of give everyone a chance to kind of shine in the day. And it also creates all those wonderful collaboration skills and the 21st century skills that they're going to need for the future, no matter what job they're going to do. Yeah. Let me go to the next slide. There we go.
So this is all great, but why are we doing this? Well, there's lots of knowledge around the gender, or lots of talk around the gender gap that exists in STEM, but also in technology. Only 26% of the people who work in technology are female. and only 5% of leadership roles in technology are filled by females. We are also aware, sorry, before I should have said that, sorry, I just want to also focus on the fact that these are very binary, these statistics.
Mm-hmm. Is this for UK or for all around the world?
This is UK.
This is UK, yeah.
I have heard even less.
Oh, really? There's a couple of,
Yeah, it depends where you ask and what,
It's around the low to mid 20s usually, I think.
Yeah.
I think like there's a LinkedIn study that said like 19% even. Yeah.
But these statistics are all very binary, so it's not women, female and female identifying, or non-binary, you know. Whilst it's whilst it's binary at the moment, there are studies that are coming that are focusing less around the binary, and that's all underway at the minute, which is great news. We're really interested to see what some of those say.
So this is what's happening in the workspace, but then if you look at if you ask the people in the workspaces why this is happening, the majority is pointing towards school, and they're going, it's happening in education. This is where we need to actually kind of do the biggest changes. Yes. Yeah. So this is what's happening a bit in education, looking at that, and we kind of wanted to understand a little bit of like what is happening and also when is it happening. So 16% of female identifying people have careers suggested to them versus 33%. And this was really interesting because this summer we were doing a little bit of checking in with students about would you consider taking GCSE computing, and then also like why or why not. And those that were, a lot of them had written down that they had been encouraged, or somebody had told them that they were good at it, or, you know, so there was a lot of encouragement that was really needed around the choice to take that. And that there's also just, yeah, I'm going to leave that one there. So there's also that 20% of female and non-binary secondary students say they consider a career in computing, compared to 61% of males, and 3% say it's their first choice. So there's a little bit here around like just understanding what that looks like again, and considering it and knowing that like actually this could be a space for me, and yeah, understanding that. And the final one, which says 20% of female identifying students taking ICT GCSEs in 2022. Yes, there's only 21% that are taking ICT of GCSEs in 2022. So this kind of all leads to really like the uptake being quite low. And this is actually much lower than 42% actually in 2013, and then in 2017 it was 39%. So while this number is actually an increase from last year, it's still quite low and it's been dropping. So it's kind of really looking at like why this is happening.
And it's important to be aware that parents are known to have an impact on these numbers, a big influence on the decisions that their children make, whether that be around their interests or whether it's around their academic choices. And many parents' mindsets are still around the stereotypical norms, which means that they impact the choices that children make towards going into computing as well, and similar subjects.
Yeah, so we're kind of looking at what's going on, like why are these statistics happening? And PricewaterhouseCoopers did a really great study, it was 2019, and they identified like stereotypes. So there is still very much stereotype that computing is for boys. And this is amongst teachers, schools, and as Sue said, there's also about with parents. And they're just much less likely to suggest it as an option still. There's also a lack of role models, so only 22% of students can name a famous female identifying person in technology. So it's really understanding that, you know, there are people out there, but it's not being named, it's not known, and it's trying to get that a little bit more into schools and a little bit more on the agenda. And then, yeah, I guess we've kind of touched a little bit on this. It says kind of what's involved. So 19% of students say they've learned about career opportunities in technology from schools. So there's a very small amount, like where are people finding out about what these jobs look like and what they involve. Yes?
Yeah, so Interests at primary level, I've noticed, does not match, well, not I've noticed, we know, interests at primary level does not match the choices that students make for GCSEs. It's very, very different. So from my own experience working in primary, teaching computing, I ran many clubs, lots and lots of clubs, and I had a 50-50 split, which I was really, really proud of. The students that would then attend outside of school, though, would not be the same. There was a real disparity between the two. So I would very rarely get females attending the out-of-school clubs that I would run. I also believe that students moving from that primary setting to secondary, I was wondering whether that disparity was led by the students, the females in particular, kind of doing a reset in their minds, thinking, I'm just going to hold back on what my interests are. I'm just going to wait and see what's cool and what's not cool and whether I can join this group if I like these things. And then they leave these things behind because they think that it's not okay or no one else is excited about them, which is so sad. And I thought that happened at year 7. So we work very closely with a girls' school in Kent. And they're actually a computing hub in Kent as well, so they're a really good school for us to be engaging with on this level. And the senior leadership there said, no, actually, they feel it happens in year 8, where the students start to really develop this attitude. It really changes at that point. So yeah, that was really interesting. And also, when considering parental mindsets outside of the term times and the attendance levels that it affected, we really feel like or I really feel like parents have less involvement on the choices that students make when they're in school. So they will choose the things that they're really interested in, but parents will actually be involved in the decision making based around what they're prepared to help them get to, whether that's a car journey or having to pay out for something financially as well. The parents might actually take more leadership in those decisions and those choices.
Yeah, so this kind of like, when is this happening is kind of something we've been kind of looking at. And so we actually had been delivering around year 6 for this. And so we got some Paul Hamlin Foundation funding, and part of that was working with year 6 classes. And we did a little bit of like a kind of, I wouldn't say it was an academic study, but it was a light study. And that was held by Georgie Tarling from the University of Exeter's Education Department. And she helped us to kind of form some questions, do some interviews with students, and kind of understand if there were already kind of gender biases there for them. And actually at year 6, that just wasn't coming out in year 6 at all. So it really is pointing to that like year 7, year 8, that we're like, okay, this is where we really need to target this action and do this. So yeah. Great, so what are we doing about it? There's good news, okay. So we're trying to provide resources and experience that are kind of shifting this. And for stereotypes, we're creating resources. We're actually in the process of creating some resources that are that educate and place computing in a larger timeline. So that means for us kind of sharing some of these statistics. It means sharing some of these resources and where you can go and what workshops that you can take part in, not just ours, but other people's, and sharing that with schools, students, and students and parents. We also kind of have in there a little bit around this larger computing timeline where up until the 1980s, it was mainly female identifying people doing programming. And it really kind of, what we can pinpoint, and we feel like we pinpoint, and what's talked a lot about is that like early 1980s personal computing, and when that came in and how it was marketed to boys and men. And like if you go online and Google images, it's quite shocking. Like it is very, like even like sexy ladies next to a computer and things like this. So I mean, it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty over the top. But what this led is that perception shift that this was for boys, and also it also led to an acquiring of knowledge that was happening at home that then led to an advantage in schools, universities, and into the workforce. So it's something and it's like, it wasn't always like this, and it's kind of trying to kind of really highlight that and show that this just, isn't always been the way. We're also looking, role models. So on our website that is in the process of being made, we have a lot of stories and profiles of female and non-binary people in technology, and kind of showing a bit of their journey, what it is that they do, and showing that like broad spectrum of amazing creative opportunities that are there. And also during our workshops, we invite people in for like a 20-minute lunchtime talk to kind of talk about how they got to where they are, which is often like that, and is kind of going, there is not just one kind of straight route in. And also what, again, that job looks like, so kids can kind of get an idea of what's involved. Yes, so what's involved, this is also in just the workshop, so going through that making process of like designing, building, putting electronics together, programming it, how to put like a show together and an experience together. Because, yeah, I don't know if I mentioned, but yeah, our one day is always about building an interactive dance performance. So yeah, they're kind of going through that whole process of that. Yeah.
So, why are we doing it this way? So, we're not the only people that are aware that this needs to be addressed. There are people like STEMettes, Raspberry Pi Foundation, the NCCE and STEM Learning, who are all working towards trying to affect change in this area, and undertaking different studies, different research studies, developing programs and curricula specifically aimed at this area, and also providing training for this area. But with 41% of female identifying students more interested in studying computer science if it's combined with other subjects, our programme really sits well within that, because combining movement and coding together, or movement, coding and physical makes as well together, it really provides an enriching mix for students that inspires them, inspires them to consider making a change to their GCSE choices and perhaps going on to choose computing. So teachers, they feel that they lack knowledge. In primary, definitely, it's just lacking knowledge in general, but that's kind of being supported a lot by the NCCE and STEM Learning in the programs that they're running, and the Raspberry Pi Foundation. But also teachers lack knowledge just in the different ways to inspire the students into it, because they're used to doing things in a certain way. So that's something we can really support with helping them to use a more kinesthetic method for teaching.
And then this has, sorry, I just
Thank you.
behind here, it says students using paired programming, which is having people on computers together, having a driver and a navigator, and then switching those roles. So doing that as teamwork can be a really great way to make it a bit more accessible and less scary. Learning through storytelling. So Raspberry Pi Foundation's done a really great study on storytelling being like a really great way to bring female identifying students into computing. And then also an emphasis on, emphasis more on the thinking, designing, and problem solving of the whole build, rather than we need to build this thing. It's about how the process of doing that is actually what's really engaging.
Yeah, and for students, for females in particular, and female identifying students in particular, to have an outcome that is unique to them, that isn't another thing that's created the same as the person who's next to them, is really, really important. Being able to actually have their own ideas go into that make is really, really important to them. They really enjoy seeing that outcome being their own, and whether that is a prototype performance or a prototype make, but the combination of those together is really valuable to them too. And then that additional layer of showcasing those outcomes, it provides the meaning and the importance and the purpose that they really value too, something to work towards. Additionally, concepts are more concretely embedded into their minds, and tricky concepts are more easily understood as well when you combine it with something that they can understand in different ways, and as well as different learning styles with movement as well.
Yeah, and especially with like computing and programming, which can be so abstract sometimes and sit very much on the screen. All of a sudden we're taking that out and making it very physical, and making a lot of like different analogies for them to kind of understand and act out, essentially being a computer, and also being dancers. So some things we still have questions about is, like, schools are doing a great job, but we wonder how we can spread this kind of way of learning a little bit wider within our own budgets, within their budgets, I mean, the lack of budgets actually. So that's a real challenge, and we're wondering how we can do more of that. And one of the things that we do feel like is missing is that we just haven't tracked this over a long period of time. So while we're like, yay, this is really inspiring, and we get that immediate feedback, we're really interested in seeing how we can kind of track that over a longer period of time, and how maybe not just us, but other people doing this kind of combined learning kind of really does make that impact on choice. And of course, like, how do we shift the larger perception of computing in all of society? That's our dream. So we have, just like some really quick resources of things. These are two studies that are really interesting to watch. They're new studies that are going to take in more gender diversity. And so Raspberry Foundation and the University of Cambridge are doing a gender balance in computing study. I think it's like a 2 or 3 year study they've just started this year.
2 year study.
2 year study. And then King's College is also doing subject choice attainment and representation in computing. And they've started that last year. And I think, again, it's like a 2 or 3 year study. So these are going to be really interesting spaces to watch. And finally, this is where you can find us. We have, Sue and I have been operating as 2 separate entities collaborating together. And we got some funding from School for Social Entrepreneurs to finally make a CIC, which is Move and Code. And these have literally arrived this week. So you can be our first followers. But if you want to find us, exactly. Website is coming soon, but for now you can go to, it's pelensemble.com, and you'll find everything you need to know Move and Code on there. But yeah, so thank you very much. If you have any questions, yes.
Thank you so much, both of you. That was such a joy to hear about. We'll go through to the Q&A session now. If anybody online wants to share any questions, please do pop them in. We've got the wonderful Emma picking up any questions from there. And anybody in the room, if you've got any questions, do raise your hands. I have the mic. Thank you, Danielle. A note to anybody in the room that the mic does not amplify in the room, but it helps people online hear your question. So people start speaking and then don't hear it. Any thoughts, any questions, anybody? Oh, help if I turned it on. Oh, help if I didn't turn it off. Hold on, have I turned it? There you go. Sorry, smooth operation. Yeah, there we go. Right, try again. Any questions in the room, anybody? Yes, yeah.
Hey, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I'm really interested in year 8 being a year when things happen. Does that feel like it's an age thing, or are there things in the curriculum that changes? Because they move key stages between 7 and 8.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think when they're in year 7, everything's really new to them, and they don't have the confidence to maybe be the strong person that they want to be, or disrupt things, I think, is what I'm thinking. When they go into year 8, I think they just become disruptors within the school a little bit more, and wanting to break against things. But it's not necessarily the right things. We want them to break the barriers around computing rather than just, I don't know, it's a really strange one. But the unfortunate thing is that it's actually when they make their decisions about what they get, often when they make their decisions about what they're going to do for their GCSEs, that either happens in year 8 or year 9. I don't remember Neil actually really being clear about why. He just said he felt that things changed massively then.
And I haven't found a huge amount in studies on it'd be really nice to do something a bit more focused about that. But I think there's also if I'm correct, Sue's probably a better person to ask about this in curriculum, but also in primary school, there's a lot more cross-curricular exchange, and that's a lot easier to have happen. Whereas in secondary school, it's just so separated to get 2 departments to share space and to actually go yes, we want to work with the dance or the PE, and we want to work with the computing, and get those to talk to each other. We find that becomes much more challenging.
Yeah, thank you for remembering.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the key issues. And the students, when they're learning in primary, everything's a lot more interesting, a lot more fun, a lot more interactive, and it has more purpose, because they have projects that they work towards a lot more. Whereas in secondary, it's we're going to sit down, we're going to go through these things, you've achieved that, let's move on to the next thing, and there's less project-based stuff. But I have been working with some schools recently who are combining things a lot more, and we are seeing a lot more schools, like the Norwood School, for example. We had both the dance department and the computing department together in our workshops, whereas often it will be one or the other. So it was really nice to see that combination and get the feedback from both as well. So thank you, great question.
I had a question similar to that one actually. There's a thing so I used to work with Sport England once upon a time. I think I've got one. Hopefully I've got one. They can hear me twice then. Sorry. Actually, there's a very similar stat in sports education and PE that young girls especially get to 13, 14 and then engagement completely drops off at that point. So it's interesting to hear you reflect on what that might be. I've got a follow-on question from it.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was just going to say, to bounce off on that, and I think that's why dance is still very engaging. We're getting female and non-binary identifying students into the space, they're moving around, and they're really engaging with computing, and that just seems like a real key and a way in to make that happen. Yeah.
I love it. And then in a similar sort of vein then, sorry everyone, I'm excited. So you mentioned like 11 to 14, but then so at the age of 14, you build such lovely joy-filled spaces for them and of them and with them. Are you then sending girls into classrooms which are not built for them? And they're like, how does that cross over? I feel like maybe computing education's changed a little bit since I was at school, but
Unfortunately with GCSE it is you learn what you have to learn to be able to pass the test, and it's not fun. We did do a programme with UCL which took a subject that is typically thought of as not so much fun within computing, which was learning about data representation, so about binary, your zeros and your ones, and how those then translate into images and text and videos and all sorts. And we then combined that with movement, and that was really interesting. And I think that what we ended up with as a collaboration between us and UCL was students being able to go into an exam and I reckon they would be able to remember the experiences they had and go, oh yeah, that was this bit of information, because they actually had a physical memory, physical movement attached to a memory. So yeah, but schools don't do that. So yeah, I can understand what you're saying. However, we also, although we only talk about 11 to 14-year-olds, we have been also talking about when we extend on our week-long showcase. Do you want to talk about the week-long showcase, or do you not know where I'm going with this?
No, don't know where you're going with it. Go for it. Yeah.
So the week-long that we do in the summer, and that we hope to repeat as well, it includes older students as well. So we hope to get some alumni coming back from this year that will maybe do it again, and then have some leadership roles within that group as well, and encourage more of the younger age students to then continue to do it. And we also want to do sort of offer work experience within that too. So then A-level, they maybe go on to do A-level and maybe go on to do it at university and have something to then put into their applications too.
Yeah. But you're right though. It's like, how do those spaces in schools then get held long term? And that I think is, that is those big questions of like, how do we track that? And like, there's so many different factors that are going into that. And like, hopefully some of these studies are kind of doing some of that. And then how do we help teachers to hold a space? Because it's like, when we're teaching in schools, we get a whole classroom. And so oftentimes that's like a 50-50, and split. And then we've also go into the computing room afterwards for like the after school club, and there might be one female identifying student in there. And you're like, okay, so it's still being taught in school, but the actual outside extra knowledge building, all that. So it's like, and I don't know if we totally have the answers, but I think some of that's just like awareness, resources. Yeah, exactly.
I think also with because we can't change what needs to be taught to be able to pass the exam. That's unfortunately how it is at the moment, exactly, but we can point to extracurricular activities outside of it, like STEMettes and Code Club and things like that, that mean that they can take the fundamentals that they have to learn to be able to pass their exams and their GCSEs and progress with it, and actually do some more fun stuff to augment it. So I think that's worth bearing in mind.
I think it's a big
we can't change the GCSEs, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a good question though.
Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Anybody online, Emma?
No.
Yeah. Go for it.
Sorry, this is a more complicated question about gender in it. So in the gender critical movement, there's a big conversation about how girls become trans boys because they don't feel they can access things.
Right.
That's terrible, and that's one thing that happens. So I love everything about what you're doing, and I don't think any of your messaging needs to change as well. But it's worthwhile. No, yeah, you might see people try and use things like this in a negative way.
Right.
So at some point, talking about trans boys could be useful.
Okay.
But this is a really complicated question, and you
Yeah.
might not want to answer it when you're in front of people because you're doing
Really
everything
interested to
right.
talk
It's
about more
very,
about
very
it,
clear that you're
certainly,
doing
yeah.
everything right. So it's not a criticism of you. It's just like
No, I really appreciate
Yeah.
you bringing
Yeah,
that
yeah,
up,
yeah,
and I don't
yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
something that we've fully considered. So
No.
I really appreciate that.
We're not
and-
best placed to.
but
We're not best placed to. We need help from the
Yeah,
community
and
to be able
exactly.
to
I think
understand that, and we
it's-
can't pretend otherwise. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I think that there's maybe just bringing in people to have a wider conversation about that. But yeah, no, thank you. That's really,
Yeah. Thank you.
that's really useful. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, there's one behind you and it's backwards.
Hiya, I'm early 50s and identify as hypermasculine. My question isn't to do with your coding. How much of the coding stuff that you're teaching is it to do with the actual process of building props, and how much of it is actually in the choreography?
Yes. So, so say if we're doing like well, actually for the one day, we spend about 2 hours, and actually the choreography is built alongside learning about programming. So they're actually building the choreography, but in that we kind of take little breaks and go, this relates to programming like this. But that's probably about like an hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning or so. And then in the afternoon, they go sit down and they use like crumble controllers and little sparkle lights, and they do the electronics of that, and then they code that to be interactive. And then at the end of the day, we put that together, so they've got an interactive dance performance with light and dance. But then for the week long, again, we try to make that split. It gets a bit more challenging because they've got to actually, because like the one day they don't build anything. So in the 1 week, they're actually building and they're doing the coding and electronics and they're choreographing. So it gets probably more like a third, I would say, for each of those, different on each day. But yeah,
depends
does
on
that
what they're
answer your
making as
question?
The actual choreography is like a third, kind of the code kind of element of that is almost a third of it.
Yes, yeah, we try to keep it as equal as we can for all those things, because I think that the students really enjoy doing all of it. And I think there's also just like a valuing of all three of them in the space that's really important to us. And sometimes we have like leads, or some students might take a lead a little bit more on one thing or the other, which is also great to see. Is that, yeah?
I don't know whether this also adds to that, but through movement, we are able, because of the way that we teach it, we're able to include the 5 fundamentals of programming, so sequence, repetition, selection, variables, and procedures. So we can actually teach all of those, as well as computational thinking as well, all through movement.
While making a dance.
While making a dance and product and all the things, yeah.
It's really cool to see more kind of examples of that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Any other questions, folks? Any thoughts? Okie dokie. We can leave it there then. A round of applause for our speakers today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So much. Cheers. I will say, yes, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm sure you will be around for a little bit longer if maybe you want to pick up some chats or anything like that. Yeah, I'm offering you up for it. And also check out remember we've got a studio exclusive. Please do make use of it. You're more than welcome to stick around with us for the rest of today. We have Open Office Friday where you can come and hot desk. If you want to find out more about any of what we do or work happening in the studio, please find a member of the team. Members of the team, this is us for the day. They'll be happy to help. If you're watching online and have got any questions or any thoughts or anything you'd like to share, do drop us a line, either on the Twitter account, which is not up anywhere that I can point at, or at studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.